Good evening. This meeting is called to order. This is the March 10th, 2026 meeting of the Shrewsbury Select Board. We will start by introducing the board and staff members present. I am Teresa Flynn.
I am Beth Cassavant.
Carlos Garcia.
Michelle Conlon.
Greg Richards.
Kevin Vizikar, Town Manager.
Keith Balding, our Assistant Town Manager for Operations.
The first item on our agenda. Oh, sorry,
Juanita
Juanita.
Anderson, Executive Assistant.
Sorry. The first item on our agenda is to approve the bills, payrolls, and warrants.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item number 2 is to review and act to approve the minutes of the February 24th, 2026 meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Madam Chair, I was absent for that meeting, so I will abstain.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? One abstention. Motion passes. Item number 3 is announcements and reports. Do any board members have any announcements?
Thank you. The town's draft hazard mitigation plan update prepared by Horsley Witten Group has been published on the town's website under the Planning and Economic Development Department's Grants and Initiatives page. The formal public comment period will now be open until March 31st. This plan identifies opportunities for the community to address climate-related hazards and build resiliency. Maintenance of this plan, approved by FEMA, provides a reduction in flood insurance rates for residents located within the floodplain. A public forum has been scheduled for March 16th at 6 p.m. in the police station training room. Please note this change from the previously announced location at Thursday's planning board meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Planning and Economic Development Department has published a survey requesting community input for the reuse of the old Empire Dry Cleaners facility at 15 Maple Ave. As of this morning, we actually have already received over 854 responses, which is excellent. However, if you haven't had a chance to respond or provide your input, that survey will be open until March the 27th. We will also be having 2 community workshops where we'll be providing feedback directly from the community. So if you're interested, come and share your thoughts. Those will be on March 31st and April 14th. Time and location of those are to be determined.
Okay, I'd like to announce that town meeting members are still needed in several precincts throughout town. Precinct 1 needs 2, Precinct 2 needs 2, Precinct 3 has the same number of people running as there are spaces, but that doesn't mean that someone couldn't run and challenge someone who is already seated as a town meeting member. Precinct 4 needs 3, Precinct 5 needs 3, Precinct 6 needs 2, Precinct 7 needs 2, Precinct 8 needs 1, Precinct 9 needs 5, which is crazy because Precinct 9 lost so many the last time because of the census. So this could be a great opportunity for some of those people to join town meeting again. And Precinct 10 needs 3. So the deadline to turn in papers to the town clerk is a week from tonight, March 17th. So if you go to the town clerk, you can get nomination papers. We recommend you collect 15 signatures. You really only need 10 from registered voters in your precinct. Your signature counts as 1, but you should get 10 or 15 just to make sure that you have enough. If you don't get them by the 17th, you can still choose to run as a write-in candidate, but that is a little bit more challenging. So I encourage people to think about who might be interested in running. If you know someone, share this information.
Can I just add a little bit to that? For folks who aren't as familiar with what town meeting is, it's the legislative branch of our local government. And to be a town meeting member is a fairly light commitment. It's usually only a few nights a year, usually in May and then October, November, depending on when things fall. Sometimes there's another special one thrown in there, but it's only a few nights a year. But the decisions that are made at town meeting are incredibly consequential to what happens in our town. So it's a huge contribution to our community with not as much of a commitment on your own part. So if there's any questions, there's a lot of really great materials. Ms. Flynn had put together a video with the town for town meeting members that it's available on our website and our social media pages. But I really encourage everybody to get involved in town meeting. It's just so important what happens there. So I'd like to get some good voices in there.
And just to clarify, when Beth says we need, it means that the number of people that have pulled papers or said
Right.
that they are interested in in rerunning is fewer, that many fewer
Right,
than the
so
number
the
of
town clerk
spots.
puts out a paper, a letter to people who who are up for reelection to town meeting. Those people need to return the paper. If they don't, then it's considered a vacancy. And then it says, okay, for example, in precinct 1, it might say, vote for no more than 8, but there's only 6 people right now that have turned in papers. That means there's 2 potential vacancies there. That's not to say that you couldn't have 5 people run, but I mean, at this point, we're begging for like 2 people, so it's unlikely. But it would be great to see, more participation. But at the very least, it would be nice to see the right number that are needed be running for the seats that are there and available.
100%. Okay, last thing we wanted to note, which we are trying to make a practice at each meeting, is to let the community know about board and committee vacancies. So for the boards and committees that are appointed by the select board, there are 6 positions on the zoning board of appeals. That includes 3 associate members that have 1-year terms and 3 regular members that have 2-year terms. The deadline for applying for the ZBA is 4:30 on Wednesday, March 16th. We also have 1 upcoming vacancy on the Register of Voters, 2 vacancies on the Commission on Disabilities, 1 on the Shrewsbury Cultural Council. In addition, for boards and committees that are appointed by the town manager, we have 1 vacancy, upcoming vacancy on the Council on Aging Board and 2 on the Historical Commission. So there is a webpage on our main webpage if you go to residents, and then you'll see boards and committees, and certainly we encourage any resident who is interested to submit their letter of interest. Okay. Is that it for announcements?
I'll announce one since I think each one of you said something.
You were out when we decided, so.
I was experiencing FOMO. So, Ms. Cassvan and I had office hours today. It was an action-packed hour with 5 residents who came in. So just want to uplift that opportunity for folks to engage with 2 board members at a time. It's before our first Tuesday meeting of every month from 5:30 to 6:30 across the hall. So just wanted to uplift that to the community.
Great. Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is the town manager's report. Mr. Miskar?
Good evening, board members. I have great news to share off the bat. This morning, the town received notice from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities approving our request for certification of the 2024 Housing Production Plan. So what this does at this point is places us into a 2-year safe harbor for the units that have recently been approved through January 13th of 2028. And the town's overall updated subsidized housing inventory was certified at greater than 10% of our year-round housing units, which means that, that establishes the permanent safe harbor that should get us through the until the 2030 census. So, this was a long effort that was put in by the board to, strategically work with development interests within the community to get us to a point where we can now have better control on the development that's proposed for housing. So we're happy to receive this certification, and we look forward to working with the board as, future development comes and the ZBA has to decide on those matters. The second thing, we received information from Representative Kane late this afternoon that there's going to be a temporary lane closure on Route 9 eastbound between Svensson Road and Worthington Avenue. It will be closed this evening, so I know not a lot of people are going to see this, but it was emergency work, and I did want to note that it could extend beyond this evening, but please pay attention in that area for future delays due to that emergency work that's been taking place. That's all I have.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5 is public comment pursuant to Select Board Policy 31. We did not receive any requests for public comment this evening. As a reminder, residents have until Monday End of business, 5 PM, before our Tuesday meeting to let us know if you're interested in coming forward. Agenda item number 6 is a 7:05 public hearing to review and act on the application of DeWright's Steakhouse, Inc., DBA Willie's Steakhouse, 2 Grafton Street, Shrewsbury, Mass., requesting approval of a change of manager for its all alcohol license. This is a continuation from our February 24th meeting.
Unfortunately, I don't see the applicant here at this time.
He's not online?
No.
No.
Okay. Do we just,
I mean, I think the
Continue it.
board has 2 options. You can continue it to your next meeting, or we'll follow up with the applicant to revisit their interest in changing their manager. And then if we don't hear from them or they signify no, then we'll,
that's
Close
fine.
it the
If-
next one.
Unless anyone has any objections, why don't we just continue for one more meeting so we have time to reach out to the applicant and see if there's a continued need?
I move that we continue the public hearing of Do Right Steakhouse, DBA Willie's Steakhouse, 2 Grafton Street, Shrewsbury, regarding approval of a change of manager for its all alcohol license to our next meeting, which is Tuesday, March 24th at 7:05 PM.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item number 7 is a meeting with town engineer Justin Richardson to discuss the annual roadway resurfacing plan and pavement condition index. Please come forward. Thanks for joining us.
board members, this is Mr. Richardson's first time before you as town engineer. He was appointed to his position at the beginning of the calendar year, and we're happy to have him on board. And as you'll see this evening, he's jumped right in to help us with some long-term planning on roadway surfaces. Welcome, Justin.
Good evening, everyone, members of the board. As Kevin said, I'm Justin Richardson. I'm the new town engineer. I've been in my post for 2 months and 5 days, so I'm all the way up to speed. So I have prepared a presentation. So this presentation was, I did it at our monthly managers meeting, and then Kevin thought it would be a good idea for me to sort of go through it in front of you guys. So basically, it's our 2026 pavement management program, and this is basically how essentially the cookies is made, essentially this year and then moving forward in future years. So as you can see, 2026 pavement management. So a little background, town owns and maintains about 155 miles of roadway. Our PCI data, now we get this data from StreetScan. Basically, there's a vehicle that drives around and scans our entire roadway network, and they provide us with PCI data for our roadways. This was done in 2021 and 2024, and a 3-year time frame is pretty typical for most municipalities, so that's not abnormal. But as you can see, in 2024, it was 53, and that actually had gone down from the 2021 number, which was 55.6.
So that, could you clarify for us, that's the pavement condition index?
That is correct.
Is that on a scale of 0 to 100?
That's 0 to 100. The next slide will kind of
sorry.
explain the
I will
entire
let-
thing.
I will hold
Yeah.
my questions
No, that's
then.
okay.
Okay.
No, continue. It's easier that way. So the information that I've found through researching, basically this program has been funded mostly through Chapter 90 allotments. I've placed all of our allotments in the presentation from 2018 to 2026, just so everyone's aware. In the fair share amendment, which was through the government, kind of bolstered some Chapter 90 funding. That was approved in 2022, but we didn't really see the gains in that until fiscal year 2024. So you can see that fiscal year 2024 through 26 had a larger, funding. But we've been informed by MassDOT that is basically going away. So in the future, we can plan for less funding, so around 1.4 plus or minus. Obviously, that changes every year, and but as a tool for us to plan ahead, we're using that number. So, and then I have some other key statistics. The state maintains about 19 miles of roadway in town. So like the larger roadways, Route 20, Route 9, stuff like that. Just we're not necessarily responsible for the maintenance of those. There's also 13 plus or minus miles of private road in town, privately owned and maintained, and then 100 miles of sidewalk. So next slide. So this is essentially the vision of the program, and I'll just read it. It's basically to improve the town's pavement condition index, which is currently at 53, and that's done by utilizing pavement management principles, strategies to minimize costs but optimize funding potential. So this is essentially the background for the program. It's in a graph essentially. So what you see here is a pavement deterioration curve, and starting at 100 when you have a brand new pavement, and then over time it deteriorates. So each one of these bands that you see is your opportunity for treatments, and as you can see by the dollar signs, the costs on the right hand side, as you dip further down in these treatment bands, it gets more expensive to repair the road as you move forward. So the first part of the preservation maintenance is called. So that's when your PCI is from 100 to 70, and that can be a crack seal or a fog seal. Once you move down to preservation treatments, that's from PCI 70 to 50. There's slurry seal, microsurfacing, asphalt rubber, chip seal, bonded wearing course, and cape seal. And then once you get into the orange zone, then you're doing your standard mill and overlays and the stuff that has typically been done in town. And then there's also opportunities now for a cold in place recycling and overlay. That's just a new thing, but typically the town has done mill and overlays. And then finally, once you get into the red zone, that's your reclamation. So that's the very expensive dollars to rebuild the road. They have to pulverize the pavement, go down 12 inches, regrade it, raise and lower castings, all that type of stuff. So, and that's the strategy here, is basically to catch the roadway before it falls into the lower treatment band. So you're spending your money at the right time to preserve that road or to keep it from going into the lower band. So that's essentially the strategy that we're trying to implement, and it's worked successfully in other towns. So the next slide, this is essentially the decision matrix for the program. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into trying to figure out which roads to select and stuff like that. So obviously the first one's funding, because we need to base our program on what's funded. So, and the next is, we like to work in our department to talk to the highway division to see where they're having problem areas, so that then we get that information, and hopefully we can reduce their problem areas and allow them to use manpower on other jobs when we keep the roadways in better condition. There's also town private utility improvement projects and private as well, so gas mains, stuff like that. We need to coordinate with them to make sure that we don't pave a road and then a year later they go and dig it up. So obviously another thing to consider. There's the PCI, which is already mentioned. We do plan to have a new scan done in 2027. That'll be on the 3-year time frame as we discussed. We've also used traffic data. I think this is Urban SDK. It basically works off of the car's GPS systems, so we can use that data to tell which roads get a lot of traffic versus other roads. So we can use those data, because those roads are the ones that are more likely to deteriorate faster, because they see much more vehicle volume and stuff like that. So but a good paving program targets not just those roads, but smaller roads, like, not, because if you only target one, then you let the rest of the roadways deteriorate too much, so they become expensive to rebuild. So a good program kind of targets both, but the ones that are the high traffic ones are definitely ones that are more important just because of their fast deterioration. So, and then as mentioned before, there's some preservation maintenance, and then there's preservation treatments. We need to know when to utilize them based on that curve, and then what the limitations are for each of those treatments, and where they can be used and where they shouldn't be used. So the next slide, this is kind of the meat and potatoes of it. This is like a graph of our PCI in town. So obviously red is not good, and as you go up orange to yellow, that's when the PCI becomes better. So as you can see in this graphic, there's a decent amount of red. So we do need to do some work in town. The next slide. So this is what I discussed with the vehicle trips per day. This, as you can see in blue, that targeted roads with vehicle trips per day greater than 1,000, and PCIs that are less than 50. So you can sort of see the hot zones in that area as discussed, where the nature of the urban SDK data is a little weird. So like we in some cases have to take it with a grain of salt, because if there's like a grocery store or something in that area, there's a lot of trips that it thinks gets generated. So like some segments of road will show up as blue, but it's really as a result of just the traffic to the grocery store, essentially. So there's just a note there. And then, so the next slide is our program for 2026. It also maps out some of the previous years from calendar year 23 to 25, just so you can sort of see how we're adding to programs, and then also continuing roadways. So two of the roadways are Oak Street and Walnut are roads that either Oak Street had a water main on it, and then Walnut Street has a sewer main being replaced this year. So we're trying to get those roadways back into good condition, because typically when a utility goes, it messes up the road with the patching and stuff like that. So, and then some of the other ones we've targeted is Prospect Street. So that was one that had a less than 50 PCI with a more than 1,000 vehicle trips per day. And thankfully for the MassDOT municipal paving program, they're going to be doing the large pink section of 140. That was also a road that was over 1,000 trips per day and in bad condition. So we're trying to keep our bids to be to our Chapter 90, but we're also going to add some bid alternates just in case we get good pricing and we can add on to the program. So we do like to carry a couple of those streets, so that's what you see in there. And what we'll try to do is if the bids come in high or we can't fund them, then we will just move them to the next year typically. So. And so just for a look ahead, my plan for the program is to develop a 5-year pavement management plan, and that's going to help us for budgeting purposes to meet our paving goals, provide utilities adequate time to perform their projects so that we can they can get their projects done, then we can come in afterward, and then also provide transparency to residents, because we can post this 5-year plan and make it available to the public so people understand where it's coming from. And we want to utilize all of our tools. So we have our software, and we now have asset management software that we're going to use to move forward with this 5-year planning. There's a lot of criteria that we have to enter into that, which I've gone over most of it today. But then we'll also have to, there's obviously going to be changes. Some roads can deteriorate faster over the next couple years. So like a road or two may switch in and out from the 5-year plan, but for the most part, we want to be sticking to that 5-year plan once we use the asset management tools and all this discussed documents to project that 5-year plan. So that's all I have for my presentation. So if anyone has any questions, very happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Board members, any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a couple. I'm gonna go first. So, just looking at the map, there seems to be a lot of red. And I guess continuing it, my question is, if we continued at the same pace of repair, how long in years would it take us to address all the red areas? Because it seems like that would be longer than 5 years from now.
So with the current funding sources, you would continue to go more and more into the red. The projection is downward, unfortunately. So you'd need to allocate some more funds on top of the Chapter 90 funding for this to be a program that's gonna, start going in the opposite direction, essentially.
Yeah, kind of a follow-up, just because that was kind of where I was
Yeah.
going with this too, where I thought, in that 5-year plan, is there a way to dollarize essentially the repairs based off estimates on these roads? So when you're saying you're putting together this projection, that we can really understand how much, a given segment. So to your point, because this is something we've talked about collectively as a board, is should we be looking at supplementing the Chapter 90 money to address some of these? Because I think this map is very telling, because when you look at it, we're not really able to address a lot of the roads in the community on a year-over-year basis, and it seems like we're going to be chasing this forever if that is what we only rely on.
That is the case.
Okay.
So with this asset management software that we've had, we can put in various projections. Once we set the parameters on it, like we want to target 30%, residential roadways, this, and then we want to use this much preservation versus this much reclaim, stuff like that. Once we get all the parameters set, we can just change budgets and say, okay, what does it get us in 5 years if we do this much money, if we do it this much money? So that's the whole point of the asset management. We would definitely probably want to vet that, through, boards, committees, and then potentially through, maybe a firm like that does a little bit more pavement restoration stuff, just to make sure that our target parameters are where we should be going. But a lot of that stuff can be done in-house with the asset management tool.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the looking at all of this, right, and bringing it sort of to the present day, right? It's been a while since I've seen a roadway study. Okay. I don't remember the last time that this came before our board. I guess it had to have been in 21, maybe. You don't need the map to know that there's a lot of red going on in town, right? Like, I feel like everybody right now is talking about how terrible the roads are. And what I hear from a lot of residents is they would like the town to come up with a plan and then figure out how to fund it and then lay it out, right? And so I guess when I listen to this and I think about the roads, it kind of reminds me of when we had the problems with water and we knew we had all this maintenance that we needed to do on our water system that had been sort of deferred year after year, and we came up with a plan. And I know this is there's no, utility fund for roads, but can we think about a way to do some sort of I don't even know what you would call it, but I don't know if you need a borrowing or what you need to pass through town meeting to allocate the funding to say, over the next 5 years, we're going to be able to put this amount of money towards roads. We're as you said, we're never going to get there in Chapter 90 money. You're saying that Chapter 90 money is going to decrease, not increase. The amount of asphalt that we can purchase for the dollars that we're getting is getting smaller and smaller every year as the cost of materials increases. And we're not even talking about sidewalks right now. We're literally only talking about streets.
Correct, yeah.
So you had on here 2 streets that needed to be completely redone, which I don't think you mentioned, right? But they were listed here, Saxon Lane and Keys House Road, right? So I'm assuming when you do those are complete streets with sidewalks.
So those are, what we're putting in our estimate is only the paving portion of it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so the sidewalks won't get redone.
So the sidewalks that are there are going to stay there?
Correct.
And they're not great sidewalks?
Correct.
I mean, you know that.
Yeah,
They're bumpy, they're uneven,
yep.
they're not, I don't think they're ADA compliant,
So,
maybe not, I can't remember.
so the problem is if you add sidewalks to the paving, then your dollar goes even less.
Right.
Even less far. So it's one of those things where we're trying to keep the PCI in a place, and not let it fall. But so where we've targeted is for the Chapter 90 funding is just for paving.
If I could, with one more comment. I think it's really difficult, I think, for residents to understand, given their tax bill, that there isn't adequate funding to be able to make the roads drivable without feeling like you're going to need to like redo your alignment after you take a trip through town. I know it's worse right now because we've had a really difficult winter and it's dug up a lot of the streets. But again, it's only gonna get marginally better when the weather kind of normalizes and some of those frost heaves disappear. I would almost like to see, what is it gonna cost to actually make some headway and to start to get on top of some of these roads that are red, that are heavily traveled by residents, so that there's a noticeable improvement for people. What does that look like in terms of dollars? And then, is it something that we can do? Is it something that maybe we wanna really talk about as a board with the community, with town meeting, and figure out, is this really where people wanna put their dollars, additional dollars?
Could I piggyback on that a little bit? My question was sort of similar. What would it look like for us to get to a place, we're sort of kind of playing catch up right now, but what would it look like for us to get to a place where we can stay on top of it, right? Like we don't have this years long list of deferred maintenance or anything, but where we're staying on top of keeping our roadways in an acceptable condition. Like what's the financial investment? What would that look like? And I think, Ms. Cassavant kind of touched on like people understanding, like we pay our taxes and all of this, but our roads are, a mess, especially after this winter. But what does the cost look like to repave a road, to resurface a road and do that thing? Because I think that things are so astronomically expensive right now. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around it. Like, we have almost $2 million coming in this year, but that's only going to get us X amount of miles. And so kind of laying out what exactly we're paying for, what things cost, like, and what would it take to get us to a point where we're, sort of staying ahead of the game.
So that's obviously a very in-depth question that we're gonna have to work through with our asset management and stuff. But I came from a previous community that had a less miles of road, had a PCI that was higher than what we have now, and they just did a borrowing of $25 million for the next 5 years to get their PCI to what they want is 80. So I think the town would need to figure out what an acceptable level is for the PCI to be, and then for us to kind of work our way backwards from that point, and figure it out. I mean, it's going to be something that needs to be done over the course of years, because contractors can only get so much done in a year. There's limitations on police details and everything else, so you can only do so much in a year to get that. So it's got to be a plan to move forward, and then there would need to be a target that we want to set to get to that's acceptable to the town, essentially. So and we could do that through our asset management plan with probably some aid from a design consultant, just to make sure all the stuff we're doing is allocated in the right spots and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
Mr. Richardson, I appreciate you being here, appreciate your work in the town and in other communities. I think that this presentation is a good one, and I think that folks watching at home are not going to be surprised by anything that we're talking about. I appreciate you also highlighting, you just touched on it very briefly right now, but your experience in your previous community where I guess that community thought creatively about how they could address this, and I think that that's something that this board is very interested in exploring too. Maybe not asking for a powering, I'm not suggesting any sort of outcome, but I appreciate you sharing that with us. Because it is one of the things that I hear a lot from residents is the conditions of the roads, and we all navigate them ourselves, so we experience it. I had a question. Town meeting last year passed a private road maintenance bylaw, and I'm wondering if that is a part of this conversation, or is that separate? Your plan for maintaining some of those roads? I know it wouldn't bring it up to full code or anything, but.
Yeah, so currently, we haven't been using Chapter 90 money to do that.
Right.
Once again, I understand that there's now a bylaw, so, my understanding, and I may be wrong on this, so I might I might misspeak here, but if my understanding is that to get it those roads to a level that can be accessed for emergency services.
Right.
So the level of, treatment for those roads don't necessarily need to be as drastic as the ones for our town-owned and operated roadways. So, that we haven't typically used Chapter 90 funding for that, but obviously since it is a bylaw, we will be investigating it and, doing what is necessary for emergency services to get down the roadways.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. And it is a new bylaw. I guess I was thinking about how there's a lot of public roads that are in the red, and I know that there are a good number of private roads that are even deeper than red. So
Yes, so we haven't analyzed those roads as part of this program, but I'm just from driving around, I would agree with your assessment.
Great. I echo my colleagues' comments. Thank you. It's great work. This, the most important thing is identifying the issue, prioritizing where the greatest needs are. And I agree, this definitely requires a multi-year strategy, and I love the idea of really engaging the community. This is the unfortunate reality. It costs a lot of money to do these repairs, and it's money that we don't have. And there are trade-offs if this is where the community really wants us to invest. And so I think having a continuous conversation, I love the transparency. I think you're going to get more people who might want to challenge you about their street in terms of order of priority, but you know what? That's great.
Yep.
We want to hear. But I agree. It's something that everyone wants improvements in, and it's an important conversation, and really appreciate you being here and outlining all this for us.
Yeah, my goal for that when with complaints is that when we can get it to go through the asset management program, it's not us selecting it, it's the program doing it, so it's a very unbiased situation. So that I've found seems to work best.
Good.
Can I just sorry, I just had one final question, because the town put this out, was this yesterday, asking residents to submit, potholes and such. How do you prioritize those?
So that would be our highway division. So engineering, like we deal with the larger scale roadway improvement projects, the maintenance portions of it, that's the highway division. So I can't really speak for Peter on how he targets
I appreciate that.
those.
So the board is going to review the first draft of the warrant this evening, and to make you not have to stay for that, assuming there's no amount that's too great, I know there's limitations, as you said, about the amount that a company can do and the amount of police details and a lot of factors, but is it kind of safe to say that if the board has a conversation this evening and then next week before they sign the warrant, we know we don't have to pick a number? I'm just trying to say, I assume there's no amount that's too much to help us move in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there are limitations. There's only so much work you can do in a construction season, so there are limitations. But
if there's like another 500,000 or 700,000
we
this year.
would be able to utilize it for sure.
Okay.
And then if we get that 5-year plan, we can start to play the numbers game a little bit better, and understand it a little better, like which is what I'm trying to push forward with this asset management program. So I think for this year, whatever you can get for us, we can utilize, and then moving forward in future years, we can really target the appropriate amount of dollars and what we can get done, and see, where it works. So.
Well, I think in the future, as you continue to work with Mr. Mizikar, where you maybe put a little bit more specificity around the costs moving forward to accomplish what we can and maybe want to,
Yep.
we'll have you come back and continue the conversation.
Yep. And we can go into cost of each treatment and all that type of stuff. That's
It's so fun. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Agenda item number 8 is to review and act to amend the term of Megan Vincent, Zoning Board of Appeals, extending it through March 31st, 2027. We appointed Ms. Vincent at our November 18th, 2025 meeting, and in making the motion, I must have incorrectly reflected a term expiration date of March 31st, 2026. So we must formally correct the record and extend the appointment to March 31st, 2027.
I move the board amend the prior vote of the select board regarding the appointment of Megan Vincent as associate member of the zoning board of appeals to reflect a corrected term expiration date of March 31st, 2027.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item number 9 is to review and discuss the draft warrant for the May 18th, 2026 annual town meeting.
Great. So Juanita's going to put up a PDF of our current plans to review with the board this evening for the first time as we head towards the May 19th. Is it 18th? 19th? Sorry. To the annual town meeting. So I'm just going to pull that up myself. So we have, I think, a rather traditional number of warrant articles that we'll be presenting for the board. Just get mine open here for the board's consideration. So I'll just run through them really briefly and talk a little bit deeper about some of the items that are on here, and then also touch on a couple other things that are still in development and under consideration, and get some feedback from you on that. So the first couple receiving reports were necessary if no annual town report was completed. Appointing the members of Wright and Harlow Trust, prior year bills, there are none known at this time. And then adjusting the current year budget and approving the FY27 budget. So this is just a note that starting next week on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, the Finance Committee will be having their hearings on the operating budget. And those are public hearings, so individuals can come in and ask questions or make comments on the budget as it has been proposed. Series of articles that are then receiving funding to offset the total cost to taxpayers, and then getting into the utility budgets that we approve separately because they're outside of the general fund, which is approved in Article 5. A couple other traditional articles: PEG Enterprise funding, paying out-of-pocket costs for disabled police and firefighters, funding some money in our insurance trust account, which we use to pay for our deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses, which varies year to year. Funding stabilization account. So this is something that I do want to come back to and talk a little bit deeper about the board, or with the board on, about how much that we want to fund. Our initial proposal when we put the master balance sheet together for fiscal projection 1 was to fund it at a sufficient amount of $300,000 to bring it to the policy level of 5% of the operating budget that we're proposing. We do have additional funds in free cash that we could consider putting on the table and increasing that beyond the 5%. So I'll just note that for now, and there's a couple other items that may quote-unquote compete for free cash that I want to talk to you all about, but we can circle back. So we're setting spending limits for a couple revolving accounts, and then, as Mr. Richardson just talked about, accepting the Chapter 90 funds from the state to do our roadway improvement program. Traditional article to transfer funds from cemetery lots and then provide funding for lakes, ponds, and waterways, which we didn't do last town meeting, but I was sure to note that that was a one-year timeframe based on funds that were on hand, but we do need additional funds to perform work this summer. Funding Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, which we traditionally do, and then gets into a series of 4 warrant articles for the capital improvement plan. So the capital improvement plan is an area that's still under development, both for the general fund and for the utility aspects, or the water and sewer and stormwater capital improvement plans for the year. We're currently proposing a little over $2.2 million in funding to the general capital improvement plan, and the details of that plan are included in the budget document that we have presented. There are a couple capital-like items that perhaps is now a good time to bring up and talk with the board about. And then we can talk about free cash and other funding sources that are available, if it makes sense. So one item that we were not able to fund, it's not a capital item, but it is an investment to make within the community, is the mailed newsletter. So that was that was historically funded through American Rescue Plan Act dollars, and since those funds are expiring, we have one more mailed newsletter to send out to residents, and then we'll be out of funding. So I'll just note that we could consider a warrant article or funding with free cash within the operating budget for the mailed newsletter. That would be a cost of $32,340 for the year, for fiscal year 27, to mail to every household in the community. About 50% of the cost is postage, and 50% of the cost is getting it printed. All the design work and writing, of course, is done within house. So that's kind of the first additional item, in addition to placing more funds into the general stabilization account. We just talked about additional funds for roadway improvements. That would be included in the general capital improvement plan. An expense that we are working to finalize right now is the redevelopment of the driveway in front of the town hall as it leads up to the police station due to the attack on the police station earlier this year. We intend to reroute traffic, not making it a single straight shot, but kind of creating a dog leg and forcing vehicles to slow down to what we've designed, I think right now, and Mr. Bottinger can correct me if I'm wrong, to less than 30 miles an hour if someone was really going fast, although that's not a normal speed. That's like a speed limitation that's been identified by our accident reconstruction team within the police department for the design that we're currently considering, and we'll of course be sharing this with the board at an upcoming meeting for conversation. The range of that option right now is between $250,000 and $400,000 to make those adjustments. And then we're finalizing a quote on the demolition of 15 Maple Avenue. So the Empire Dry Cleaners, our budget hold right now is for $40,000 for that work, and that would just raise the building and bring it back to level ground and not do any improvements. But that's that cost, which we'd like to talk to the board about. When we look a little bit deeper into the general stabilization account, basically, roughly every 0.25% is about $270,000. So if you wanted to take it to 5.25% of the budget, it's like 262, and then 5.5 would be an additional, $686,000. So I guess it's just a conceptual conversation this evening, and then we can pick the right amount. But when I'm talking about these investments, we're talking about the using free cash to fund them. As a reminder, we'll start this we started the fiscal year with about a little over $13 million. We contributed $1.5 million to the high school project for the feasibility study. So we have about $11.2 million on hand as we go into the annual town meeting. As we build the baseline warrant and everything that's proposed, kind of what I've gone through so far that requires funding from free cash, it's about $3.5 million in total expenditures, leaving about $7,683,000 left. So $7,683,000 left puts us well above the amount that we had when we left the annual town meeting last year, which was about $5 million. So technically, even if we wanted to bring the financial conditions back to where we were at the end of last town meeting, we have about another $2.6 million to spend. So the only other thing that has been considered that was reviewed and approved by the board earlier this year was bettering John Street and taking it from a private way to a public way. We recently learned when we updated our information on residents that live along John Street, we found that 4 properties have turned over since the vote. One of the individuals was present at that vote, but 3 of them weren't. So we want to go back to the actual property owners before we commit to a betterment and impose it on their property. I think legally we could move forward if we chose to, but since new residents are there and since it is competing for funding, the total project is about $600,000, and the town's contribution, including water, is about $400,000 of that. We want to pause that and reconsider it in the fall. So I don't want to. We're not ignoring it. It is something that we put in the pipeline, but it's not a guarantee that we'll do it in the first year that we go to the next town meeting. So happy to kind of clean that up. I didn't mean to get too far afield of the capital improvement plan. I think my main point this evening is that we're still working on a number of additional things. We'd like the board to consider funding the mailed newsletter. There's a consideration for additional funding for roadways from Mr. Richardson's presentation. We have, funding that's needed for the town hall campus driveway, 15 Maple Avenue demolition, and then any that would be desired for increasing general stabilization above policy level. So happy to talk that through at this point before we go through the rest of the warrant or whatever the board would like.
So in total, you're saying about 3.5 million in capital improvement?
So our capital improvement plan's about $2.2 million, and then we're using $1 million of free cash for funding the EMS system, and then Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, funding of waterways and ponds, and the insurance trust takes us up to the 3.5.
Okay. And then the remainder still puts us at or around policy for free cash?
Yeah, so our policy is to have at least 5% of, once free cash is recertified, to have 5% of the ensuing year's budget. We're well above that at $13 million, so we're like $5 million over that. With the proposed expenditures that we just talked about that are kind of solid, that leaves us with $7.6 million, $7.7 million of free cash left. If we were to fund the newsletter, $500,000 for roadways, $300,000 for the town hall campus, and another $300,000 for general stabilization, which would double our contribution. That is about $1.4 million in total, $1.3 million in total. So we'd still be well above the free cash level that we left town meeting with last year. Sorry, I feel like I don't have a good way to present this.
Can I ask a quick question? Isn't the town campus driveway, is that recoupable, the 300,000 or not?
The driveway portion we don't think is. I mean, certainly all the damage to the building would be part of the insurance claim, and, cracked sidewalks and all that stuff immediately at the building, but changing the roadway layout we don't think will be reimbursable.
Okay. That's another funding question. I think it's currently 13, just a clarification on the PEG piece. I know that there's been a declining contribution just due to subscriptions. Is there a way to look at that or review what that total contribution is to make sure that the decline year over year isn't negatively impacting SMC's ability to operate?
Yes, I can engage with SMC on that.
Okay.
$40,000 for the demolition of Empire, that seems so low. Is that,
Keith is working with Carl.
Yeah, they worked with a
Yeah.
contractor, and that their number was actually lower.
Keith's driving the
So-
excavator, actually.
auction off
That'd be really cheap.
that
But-
sign, maybe we
Yeah.
can
Yeah, we
net
definitely will do that, yeah.
But yeah, we
Auction the sign.
yeah, I did work with a
Did that.
contractor on the budget, and then I put in some other funding in there in case bids come in higher. But
Okay.
that's where we're at.
Are there known like hazardous materials in that building? I know there's issues with soil contamination, but is the building itself?
So we're literally, this week, we have a LSP that's in place. They're actually having a site visit on Friday. We can assume that there is probably some lead-based paint in there. There may even be some asbestos in there, but we don't know fully until our engineer gets in there.
Thanks.
Has there been any consideration in the newsletter for maybe not as colorful? You know, like doing more like what the library does, that perhaps might reduce the cost a bit?
Look at that.
I feel like when we first had the conversation, we talked about, the library was was it like 15,000 a year? And I understand we're trying to brand, and maybe that's, what we're going for.
That's something we can look into, though.
Yeah, I think there should be more cost-effective options.
Ours
The
is several
schools-
pages, like, can we just but the schools sell advertising,
Yeah.
Yes.
remember?
It's allowed.
We are not selling advertising.
I prefer not to.
But the school's newsletter that they mail out is not full color, I don't believe, and it's more of a newspaper material than it is like what we send.
I think it is full color.
Is it? Okay.
Definitely the advertisements.
Well, the other piece of it is that Article 32 talks about going digital and going away from print when it comes to public notices, public meetings, things like that. Where, it's approximately $20,000 that I guess if we didn't respend, funds could be available. But the other thought process is, if we're saying that it's not important enough to publish in the paper public notices because we don't think people are looking at them, or procurement notices, do we really feel that people are getting value out of the printed edition of the newsletter? I think that's a valid balance. On one hand, we're going digital. On the other hand, we're like, no, we want to spend 30 grand to print something. It doesn't 100% align to me.
I struggle with that one as well. To me, it's a nice to have. I personally haven't received a ton of feedback on it, so I'm and I don't know if it is something that the community would want us to continue to invest in printing, and maybe there's a creative way we can digitally ask them or put it in the next,
Yeah. We definitely have digital options to go
Yep.
fully digital with it, and, we've analyzed some things like Substack in the office and go in that route. We were trying to meet, a portion of the residents that, aren't digitally engaged, but you're right, it's the balance of the cost and the outcomes of that engagement that we're trying to weigh.
Because even if we did a limited print to make it available for those who prefer, what we find is that those are the people that most, on average, most need it
Yep.
delivered to their residents.
Correct, right. No,
So it's a tough one, where we don't want to exclude those that prefer it, but,
We don't have any statistics, right? There's no data around.
No, only anecdotal. When we first started doing it, it was very positive reviews, and It's not novel anymore, so I
Right.
don't know how much that has changed things.
I just wonder if it gets lost in the mail. I know it would at my house, unfortunately. People are like, what is that? Like, that's its own newsletter, you guys. What are you talking about? I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard.
Oh, sorry.
Go
I think it is important for us to try to continue to keep it alive. It's anecdotal, but I feel feedback that I hear is that it's still really challenging for residents to find out information about things online, and so trying to keep all those avenues open is something I think is in line with what we're trying to do, which is make sure that what we're doing is getting out there to people. So I certainly think exploring ways to bring that cost down is important too. But I think we should continue it. At least that's my thinking.
Will we fully reclaim the estimate, the 20,000 on this, back to Article 32? Would that funding be available completely, or because I don't know how much was procurement advertising versus legal notice and other pieces?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right, I don't think we would necessarily fully claim it all, and that's also a policy piece too, right? We have to
Yeah.
decide what exactly we're not going to put in the newspaper. This gives us the option to not, but it doesn't mean that we wouldn't post a planning board public hearing or something to that effect in a newspaper. You know, I think the most expensive driver is the procurement piece, and we know from vendors that they're not using the local newspaper to find that work. But I don't think we would see a full return on the $20,000.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because when I think through the proposal for Article 32, I can get behind not doing the procurement, but I know there are people who like actually read them, like scour them,
Yep.
and then ask me about them, and I haven't scoured them, and I have to go back and like, take a look again. So I really, and also like when something doesn't, they're not in a butter, but they're just far enough out, it gives people, information that they need about something that might be of interest to them. So I wouldn't be in favor of not advertising in the Community Advocate or the Telegram, however we typically do it. I think it's a both and, right? But
Yep.
the procurement, like as I'm hearing from you and from the manager, it's not where people are going.
Right.
Um,
And that's the thing, like most, I will say, contractors and vendors, they use some sort of a service that finds the stuff for them, or the state has 2 locations that we have to put the procurements up for people to find too. So that's required now. This just literally removes the newspaper advertisement of that project or that procurement. And again, it doesn't mean that we don't have to use it, because there may be projects that we want to make sure that are in there, but not necessarily all of them.
So you're looking for the flexibility.
Correct.
Yeah, I share your concerns about legal notices. I actually read them every week when I get the Community Advocate in the mailbox. Like it's I read it I read all of them for Shrewsbury. And I think it's important. There's a lot of folks, like my own dad, like doesn't use email. He doesn't use digital stuff. It's like the newspaper is his way of getting information. So I have concerns about, pulling that piece, but procurement for sure is, the procurement world has moved on from newspapers, but for notifying residents about things that are going on, I think it's important to keep doing that. Do we know what the split is right now? Like where,
We can know the split by department, but we don't necessarily know the split by what each thing is, like whether it's procurement or legal notices or just an advertisement. Like we know that Selco spends a lot of money. They spent a lot of money this year. We think a lot of that is related to print advertisement and not procurement. That's not included in this package. This is only completely what the town does. So we do have it broken down by department.
okay.
So keep going for a little bit. We don't have to make decisions right now. And a lot of this, again, even when we sign the warrant at your next meeting, like we have a capital improvement plan and we can refine it. Like we don't have to make these decisions for most of them next week, but just some things that aren't in there that wasn't in the original capital improvement plan that we need to clear up before we get to the town meeting.
But could we get some information around the
Yeah,
cost
well-
of the newsletter?
Yeah, we'll get all the information you're requesting on all these matters, and we'll get final estimates for 15 Maple Avenue, and we'll refine the plan and bring it to the board, before town meeting on which option that we're looking at for the driveway reconfiguration and things like that.
Okay.
So just to make sure I don't miss anything, so I'll go back to Article 23, so sewer capital improvement plan. We are planning to make significant investments in sewer once again this year. We do have the opportunity, we've done a lot of research on our financials and closing out projects that have been completed that have, 5, 6, 7, 8% of what was left because, we came in under budget or didn't need contingency. The two major projects that will get underway for construction with this funding will be the force main in Walnut Street, which Mr. Richardson referenced. So this will allow us to finally get Walnut Street repaved. It will, more importantly for sewer, really, alleviate a pinch point or a narrow section of pipe that's under Walnut Street to increase our overall flow and capacity within the area and reduce the likelihood of overflows. The second largest piece is the replacement of the pump station at Harvey Place, and Harvey Place is the pump station that's right next to the Burns Bridge, and it sits at basically Lake Quinsigamon water level, and it's an old style deep well pump. Very easy to run sewer along a lake, and so that's why we have assets in that area because of the geography, and then we pump up from that point. So it's aged, last refurbished in the 70s, and so both of those projects are about $2 million, $2.5 million a piece, and that's our sewer improvement plan. Stormwater is continued maintenance and asset investment to clear detention ponds, detention basins. The water capital improvement plan, nothing extraordinary about funding here. We'll do some article closeouts to free up some cash that were dedicated to prior main projects. We'll continue with our water main replacement project, and we'll, not necessarily anything for town meeting, but we'll be borrowing the final tranche of the $12 million that was approved later this year to do meter replacements and additional main work. So 26 is transferring funds statutorily that we have to with our Community Preservation Act funds, and then there are 3 CPA projects that are placeholders. There's a citizens petition placeholder that we always have on the agenda at this time, and then we'll get into zoning adjustments, and Mr. McGoldrick is here to talk about that in our next item. I'll let him go through that after I wrap up here, and then we talked a little bit about digital legal notices. This is a request for special legislation to not have to advertise all notices that the town currently has to do in a newspaper, given the conversation that we just had, mainly focusing on procurement and less on public hearing notices. Special legislation to increase basically tax abatements and exemptions. So this is a novel approach that's been developed by our principal assessor Ruth Anderson. This would increase the number of residents that are eligible for tax exemptions, property tax exemptions, by increasing the amount of money that individuals and married couples can earn and the assets that they can have on hand when applying for this. So Shrewsbury is a late adopter to adjusting our exemptions to inflation, and our goal is to just kind of catch up with other communities that did it a lot earlier and benefit residents. I think right now there's only about 60 residents that are eligible for exemptions each year through this program, and we hope to be able to expand that greatly. It's hard to really know, even if we know what we're going to increase it to, how many residents would be eligible, because if you're not eligible, many people don't apply to the current program. So the state has asked us to establish a special purpose stabilization fund for our fire apparatus replacement. And we did this through our capital improvement plan last year, but they flagged it for us and said it should be a separate account. So we'll do that, and then we'll provide funding for that. Remember, we used it this year for the ambulance. Route 20 easements, Keith, did you want to handle this real quick?
Yeah, so Route 20, and you all know of the Route 20 widening project from Green Street to Northborough. So part of that widening process is taking of easements and temporary easements. The town owns 3 parcels along that way that the state needs an easement from us for, both for permanent widening and construction easements. So that is what this article is for, and we're working with town council on the article itself and the language.
And then we do plan to propose the use of $100,000 towards the 300th celebration expenses of town departments. So this isn't fun, exciting party planning. It's things like police details, staff overtime, and things like that that would be related to particular celebration and events through that. We hope to return as much of that as possible, but we don't want to burden the 300th committee with having to fund a lot of ancillary expenses as they work to provide enjoyment and entertainment for the community. So again, this would be, detail expenses, police and fire coverage for events, EMS coverage for events, things like that. And then finally, under consideration, which would also be a zoning bylaw, if we move it forward, would be a tree protection bylaw that's proposed to maintain a tree canopy within the community within the zoning setback areas, and requiring contributions or replacement anytime a tree is removed within those kind of no-build zones within our zoning bylaw. We can talk more about that. We are finalizing the draft bylaw, and we'll have it out to the board within the next few days for your consideration. Again, this is our look at the draft warrant at this time, and we have a little bit of work to do over the next 2 weeks. Are there more articles on the next page, or is 38? That's it? Okay, thank you. Just
Are we
wanna
allowed to
keep
ask a
going.
question? Can we ask questions about the tree bylaw now? Or?
Sure, absolutely.
I know it's not completed because I know that there wasn't like specific dollar amounts in there, but it's just more clarifications on applicability. The way I read it, I believe this is true. Maybe I'll give a example of what I don't think applies, because what I believe, if a general resident does a project, say they put a deck in, wouldn't apply. It's really only if you're demolishing a structure, or you're building a structure on a vacant lot, or you're making a large addition that's 50% larger than your footprint. So all those types of things, like I've added a sunroom or I did this, it probably wouldn't apply. Is that a fair assessment?
I think so, because it would be within the setbacks.
Yeah.
Where you're allowed to build on the property.
Okay, so it's not gonna impact, let's say, every building permit that would come in front of the town per se, correct?
Yeah, and our zoning definition, and Chris is up here and can help. We have a term in there for this area already, tree, I don't mean to put you on the spot either. Tree area or.
Tree yard.
Tree yard, thank you. That we're leveraging that definition that exists within the bylaw to define the area where, if trees are removed, that they would need to be replaced.
And then, the one thing about it, I just don't know what the burden of bringing in some of these experts, because I know at times it can get expensive, like if you ever do a conservation engineer, things like that. But it says that you have to have a certification, or applicant must submit documentation from a certified arborist confirming the tree save area has been installed. So it's almost, is that similar to like erosion barriers and things like that, where you actually have to show that it's in place prior to construction? So there would be, does anyone have idea what costs are for this type of thing, like on a per tree basis or anything like that?
So I don't have a cost estimate for that, but it would be a professional expert, certified arborist, likely with landscaping firms. That would be something that's available. But
correct. It would be like an erosion control barrier or some other form of protection that would be installed and, per this bylaw, would be reviewed by that expert provided to the town for verification, so.
And what board would have purview over? Is it a planning board piece, or is it,
I believe this places the responsibility with the select board.
but so if somebody's gonna do so we're gonna hear hearings on trees?
I'd have to double check that part of the bylaws we have drafted right now.
Because my thought, wouldn't that make more sense that it's either a
Conservation.
conservation, yeah, or planning board or something where you're already talking about those things.
And they're gonna go and make sure that the trees are still maintained for good health for 24 months? And so they will enforce it.
That would be the requirement, yeah, with the bylaw.
I'd be in big trouble.
I know. that's what
Everything
I'm
I
saying.
plant dies.
But it's only, I guess it's limited to the scope of when it is applicable. About the trees have to be 24 months. It'd be good to know what the actual costs were, because it's not clear as to what that fee is, the financial contribution, like how much is that gonna be?
And would this take effect immediately? So like projects that are in process and haven't been permitted yet would be subject to this, or?
It would follow all the provisions of a zoning bylaw adjustment, so once it's notified for public hearing, then that would put people on notice that they would have to comply if it's adopted for any project beyond that.
Okay.
And officially, then, we would it would be reviewed by the Attorney General's office as well.
Of course.
My comments on this, Mr. Miskar, I appreciate you and the staff support in drafting this. This is the first time that we as a board have seen the draft, and so I know that this was an initiative that I had raised during one of our workshops several months back. It has been, I've worked with some residents and with actually a high school age student who helped me just kind of conceptualize this and again, raise that with the board. It seemed that there was support to move forward with drafting something, and so I appreciate the questions and comments from Mr. Richards and Ms. Cassavant, because I do want this to obviously be something that works and fits well with our community. It pulls from tree protection bylaws that other communities have done, which there are a small handful of them, but I think this actually pulls from different pieces from each one, if I'm understanding correctly, how the staff drafted this. So I appreciate those considerations, and certainly appreciate also the work to include provisions in here to prioritize native trees, since those are going to be obviously the most beneficial in our community. So as I talk with residents about just, again, the concept of this, it seems very timely, and I think that there's a lot of residents who would be very much in favor of us doing something in this area. So again, just want to thank the staff for helping bring this to where it is.
We good to move on, Mr. Mizzega?
Yeah.
Everyone else?
Everyone else
Okay,
is.
great. Lots to do in the next 2 weeks. Before we move on to agenda item number 10, let's catch our error in real time and go back to agenda item number 8. We incorrectly said in the motion that Ms. Vincent is an associate member, and she is not an associate member. She is a member.
So I'd like to re-vote if that's possible. To review and amend, I'd like to move that we amend the term of Megan Vincent Zoning Board of Appeals, extending it through March 31st, 2027.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let that be the last time we have to do that.
Agreed.
Okay, agenda item number 10 as Mrs. Carr noted, is to review and act on the planning board's recommendation on the proposed zoning bylaw amendments for the annual town meeting, and refer said amendments back to the planning board for public hearing. So, Mr. McGoldrick, thank you. Chris McGoldrick, our Director of Planning and Economic Development, is here to summarize these planning board or the proposed bylaw amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, so that we can go through the process of sending it to the official process of the planning board being able to review.
Thank you. Members of the board, I'll be brief this evening. It is largely a cleanup article that we're proposing for this annual town meeting. It has a two-part kind of action put into it. One is to retire a term within our accessory use table of summer homes. It is one instance that it occurs within the bylaw with the recent renewed interest in accessory dwelling units. It has caused some confusion and inquiry in our office. It serves no purpose in our bylaw, so our recommendation is to remove it to provide additional clarity to that section. In addition, the town recently revised the existing accessory dwelling unit bylaw in order to align with state statutes. We received the Attorney General's response and approval for that section. In that approval, it included a recommendation for additional adjustments to the bylaw. This proposed amendment to that accessory dwelling unit bylaw incorporates that recommendation, providing a very narrow instance where accessory dwelling units would be allowed in a front yard, to align it with state protections, which are already written into the legislature. So provides for that additional clarity and assists the town and boards, protects them from unnecessary lawsuits related to prohibiting accessory dwelling units where they would not otherwise be allowed.
Board members, any questions?
Yes.
Okay. It was a very emphatic yes.
Well,
I
definitely.
do.
I definitely have a question. Because I think this is really important. And I guess it's just a clarification, Chris, on this. Because it's a very broad language. I get that. But I just want to make sure I understand exactly what we mean and we're not opening ourselves up potentially for areas, because my understanding would be, and this is why I want to walk through it, is how do you kind of define the ADU itself, where it be prohibited? My assumption is it's because, let's say, I do not have setback available to me in my side or rear yard, utilizing our accessory dwelling unit bylaws that exist. So I can't do that. I don't get relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals for said setback. Is this fair so far? But because of the Dover Amendment piece saying that these are, as of right uses and, protected uses, you can't tell somebody they can't have an ADU at all. So my question with this is, do we have the flexibility to push back on a applicant on, well, I want to have this ADU of this style, and this is where I want to put it, and do I have to have it in my front yard? You still have the ability to say, you have to do or try and reshape or change your plan to try to fit it there. That's where I'm afraid people are going to go, oh, can't put it in the back, can't get it in the setback, got to go in the front. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. So it allows the board to push back on that, as you're stating, where the language is where, only in instances where it would be outright prohibited. So it's incumbent upon the applicant requesting that approval to show that there is no other instance where they can meet that without placing the accessory dwelling unit in the front yard. So if the board was able to find any other way to relocate that, they would not be allowed to place it in their front yard.
And this is a Zoning Board of Appeals decision, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I should say, to clarify that, it depends upon which board it comes before, but
Well, I'm assuming,
generally
the
the
only
zoning
reason
board
I was
appeals
saying in
would
this
correct
case,
it.
yeah, because you would, if you could fit it within our regular zoning bylaws, it would just get approved by the, I guess, building department, right? The only reason you would have to get relief would be through the zoning board of appeals.
Correct.
Okay.
So we're just voting tonight to, send these to the planning board so they can go through the public hearing process and potentially discuss some of the questions.
Correct. So this, the process from here, if the board is willing, would place it on the warrant. It'll be sent to the planning board at their April 2nd meeting for public hearing, at which point they would provide a recommendation back to this board and town meeting in relation to that
Great.
article.
So it's okay?
Can I just interject as well on the tree bylaw would have to go through that same process. So is the board comfortable this evening in moving that to the planning board as well, I guess is the question.
I guess in the tree bylaw, it still says the select board as the determining agency of
We can
different
am-
things.
we can
Is that
amend
gonna change?
We can amend that, yes.
Okay, I'm okay if that's amended to send it.
I also, rereading through that section, so the select board's operation in that would be accepting any of the fee in lieu of protecting the trees. Largely that bylaw as a kind of prohibition would operate administratively through building permit process. It defines those criteria, so.
Okay. Yeah, I would be comfortable with that.
Okay.
So I move the board submit the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to the planning board for public hearings.
That motion's sufficient enough?
And the
Both-
tree
both
bylaw.
of
Tree
them,
bylaw.
Both of them.
Oh, it's just the proposed zoning bylaw amendments.
Yes.
And,
that-
so, okay, and that would incorporate the tree bylaw. Okay, so I move that we submit the proposed zoning bylaw amendments for the May 2026 annual town meeting to the planning board for public hearings.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGoldrick.
Thank you.
Sorry to have you stay so late.
Happy to.
Are you though? Are you though? Okay. Agenda item number 11 is to review and discuss the solid waste infrastructure for recycling grant award from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Mr. Mizikar, are you taking this one?
Yes, I am. So, board members, as you know, a week ago, it seems so much darker and colder a week ago than it was today.
It was.
Whenever we had the joy to announce that the town received a Swiffer grant, which is solid waste infrastructure for recycling. I just wanted to run through that same presentation this evening to share with the public, outside of a press conference, what this really means for the community. So first and foremost, it's the largest federal recycling grant for a municipality in Massachusetts history. It's $2.7 million that we'll be able to make investments in our solid waste and recycling infrastructure within the community. So I'll talk a little bit about sustainability in the community. I won't spend a lot of time here. Many people are familiar that we've have a plastic bag ban enacted. We're a green community. We have polystyrene ban implemented within the community. We launched a climate action and resiliency plan in 2023 and established a sustainability committee in 2024. A couple other initiatives that we're doing on this front is mattress recycling collection services, which started in 2022. We moved to single stream recycling with with carts for every home in 2024, and we started a food waste drop-off pilot program in 2025. And thus far, over the last 6 or so months, we've diverted about 13,000 pounds of food waste from the solid waste stream from 150 household participants, which is a tremendous amount. And we know, obviously, residents that are willing to bring their food waste to the town hall and put them in a container are the most committed, and we will likely won't have that same success on a household by household basis, but a great way to pilot this program. And we've done a bunch of other initiatives, and we really look forward to this grant being able to expand recycling initiatives for the whole community. So what does it really mean? So we're going to have a new drop-off center at South Street that will allow us to collect hard-to-recycle items and some hazardous items that residents currently have to drive great distance to the town of Sutton to be able to dispose of right now. This isn't gonna be like a recycling center where you take, all your recyclables that should be collected at the curb, right? Those will continue to be collected at the curb, and then this will be a unique collection station there at South Street. So we're going to expand food waste and composting to the curb for all residents within a few years, and this program will fund it. And then we'll have all the ancillary new equipment to be able to collect those materials at South Street and to be able to start the new program. We also intend to move to cart-based trash collections at the curb as well. We'll need to work with the board on how we look at fees, whether they're on a bag basis or a different basis moving forward, to generate that incentive to recycle and reduce solid waste as a pay-as-you-throw program has since its inception. But we do intend, mainly because it's the market driving, this condition that's needed in the community, so people don't have to get out and throw bags from the curb into the back of a vehicle. They can do it on a more streamlined basis with an arm if we have carts to collect everything for their utilization. So a little bit more about that recycling center. What we'll be able to accept is those, again, hard to recycle items. It'll be easy access and more equity since you don't have to drive it as far. And then we'll also have some sort of tool library and item exchange there for things that are lightly used and others may be interested in using them in the future. So we have a roadmap ahead of us. It's a little longer probably than most would expect, but we finally have an official award, and we'll start to move forward. We won't actually have the grant funding on hand until the October timeframe, so that kind of puts us, a long lead time to get started. We'll start that new facility construction in calendar year 27, and by late 27 or early 28, we'll be moving into the new programs like food and yard waste collection, expanded to the entire community, and then we should have the recycling center grand opening in 2029. So conservative time frame. Hopefully we can move it faster, but we're really excited. I just want to take the opportunity to once again thank Gosha Stolarska, who is our solid waste program manager, who is the author of this grant. She's very diligent and resilient in the process that she used. She applied for this in 2023 for the community. We didn't get it. She worked hard with EPA to understand how we could improve our application, and it's really amazing that we're one of 17 communities in the entire country to receive these funds. There were 304 applicants this year, and it's great to have this opportunity to make some improvements in the community with federal dollars.
Well, congratulations again. It's a huge accomplishment. I think the community is going to be really excited about the opportunities, and agree with you. This was a great effort and accomplishment by Gosha and team, but clearly, as we said earlier, you've really enabled and supported town staff to pursue opportunities like this. So it's really impressive.
Can I ask a couple clarification questions? Because I think one thing that's left out of this that I just want to make sure we're going to wrap our arms around is ongoing operational costs that are changing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are required staff adds to execute the program, both with curbside pickup, operating vehicles, the recycle yard.
Sure.
And then also, I don't know, I think some of these details maybe just have to be ironed out, and I think they want the community to know, I think a lot of this still has to kind of solidify because it's not really figured out. Because if we have composting carts and now we have reduction in bags, now that revenue stream that's offsetting our tax levy to run the program goes down. How do we fund this?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of these things long term, I think it's great. Don't be wrong that we got it, but I just want to make sure we're looking at the full picture and we're mapping it out to say, what's the true impact? And are we planning on the longer term ongoing costs of this in the future? And making sure that we're not signing up for something that we're like, ooh, we didn't take that into account. Like,
Mm-hmm.
forgot about that. So that's what I just want to make sure that we are taking some time to walk through these models of
Yep.
what's going to change when we start minimizing maybe what's in the bags and how we're collecting them and so forth and so on.
Yeah, I think it is very early in the process. I think the town has a really great reputation of making sure that we don't dig ourselves into a fiscal hole or not think through, potential recurring costs. I think we've already, seen some residents who have, come forward that, we'll address in future correspondence. So whether it's just the disruption of expanding the facilities, or to your point, how are we going to fund this once the grant funding is gone? All really important, and we'll have to take a very
Yeah.
thoughtful approach.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely admit, we're moving from a grant application that was successful to, nuts and bolts and fiscal analysis and all those things. The food waste, as, everyone knows why it's so important is because it is one of the heaviest components of household waste right now. So, just generally speaking from subsequent conversations that we've had, it's if we can get that out of the waste stream, it's volume from a space wise within the bags is smaller, but its real benefit is in the reduction of the tipping weight at the incinerator that, would really allow us to save money and rediverts, some of those things, some of those expenses into other aspects of the program. But rest assured, we'll be back to the board with the financial plan and work through all those things with you.
I mean, when we think about the recycling center itself, that was part of the plan if the, DPW project had gone forward.
Correct.
So I think it's just interesting to think about that at this point, it's still out there what we want to do with the DPW itself. Is now a time to also be thinking that through in light of the fact that we have this grant funding to be able to complete part of what was intended. I know it's not a very big part monetarily, but it still is part of what we were thinking of doing. And, you get this up and running, and then let's say we're going to move forward with some sort of renovation. What happens to that area?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot to think through. I also think residents are really interested. I wonder if we could get regular updates on progress being made in
With this
work.
grant?
Yes.
Of course, yep.
Ready for a motion?
I
Do
think
we need
we
this
need
motion?
anything.
We do not need, okay.
Item number 12 is to review and act to designate the police chief the authority to assign specific police officers to polling places pursuant to the Votes Act. It is our practice to authorize the police chief to assign specific officers to polling locations for the annual town election on May 18th, 2026.
The annual town election is on May 5th.
Yes,
Oh, did I?
that's town meeting.
Thank you. Annual town election on May 5th, 2026.
Okay. I move that we designate the police chief the authority to assign specific police officers to polling places pursuant to the Votes Act.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 13 is to review and act to sign a letter to support for the federal congressional member-directed community project funding request. Town staff have submitted a request to Congressman James McGovern for federal funding to support the expansion and improvement of the Shrewsbury Senior Center, to strengthen food security services, expand outreach and programming space, and improve building resilience. The project also includes replacement of the building's HVAC system and installation of a backup generator. A letter of support from the Select Board is required to demonstrate municipal support for this request. The town has also received letters of support for this request from the Chair of the Shrewsbury Council on Aging, State Representative Hannah Kane, and State Senator Michael Moore. So if awarded, the federal funding would support capital improvements to the Shrewsbury Senior Center and, of course, reduce the need for local funding for these improvements. Mr. Baldinger, anything additional you want to add here?
No, well, not about what you said about the project itself, but, this came to us about 2 weeks ago. And I will say that I looked at this as an opportunity to help us with our food pantry. and supporting the residents. And I did take it upon myself to apply for the grant because I did look at it, like, it's an earmark, first of all, so the congressman needs to get it through the Capitol, and then, but Congressman McGovern is somebody that is passionate about seniors and passionate about food insecurity for residents, so I kind of took that. I looked through the guidance document that was shared from his office, and it stuck out to me as something that he might stand behind and help the community with. And so I will say I took it and I went with it. There are many other earmark styles that we could have chosen, but a lot of them we wouldn't have probably gotten past anyways because we're not a rural community, or we already have a PFAS plant in place and water infrastructure and other items like that. So this one stuck out to me as a community need, and I took the initiative to apply for it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yes. I don't have to go first this time.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Well, all right, first of all, I just want to say I 100% support seniors, and Keith, I fully appreciate the application. I do have actually a couple questions, just because I'm trying to understand how many seniors or how many Shrewsbury residents is this really going to impact. I understand that we're limited with the number that we can service today based off of the current size of the pantry. I do also know that there's other programs out there, not only SNAP, Meals on Wheels, some other things for food insecurity for seniors. So do we have an idea, I guess the first question is, of how many additional Shrewsbury seniors this would enable us to support?
Well, right now, we're supporting 150 or so families out of the current food pantry space. So I don't have an exact number for you, but I would think that we would easily be able to double that. You know, St. Anne's services a lot of non-senior residents. I think this will help expand the food pantry service, also give the senior center some general updates that it needs anyways. And we'll have space for other services, whether it's for outreach coordinator or some support system that senior residents may need, not just related to food. It could be other items that we could help them with.
As a follow-up, does this have to be in the senior center? And the reason I say that is we're sitting in the building that we had $4 or $5 million of upgrades. A lot of this money is modernizing the entire, granted they're not the same size building, but we're modernizing all the HVAC controls, backup generators, interior design updates. So, I mean, to me, is it impossible to say, well, why couldn't we have it here and try to address issues we had?
Well, one of the grant restrictions is a main city hall or town municipal government center. So that could be a town hall, city hall, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like the grant area that I chose talks about community centers, senior centers, and other like recreation areas. The main form of municipal government center is spelt out, and I don't have the exact words for you, but it is spelt out that we couldn't do it at town hall.
Okay.
Like it would have failed.
I can add a little bit to that, to your question with the residents. The senior center food pantry right now serves about 150 families. Because of the limitations that they have in how many families they can serve, there is a requirement that families utilizing the senior center food pantry have to be a recipient either of SNAP or like some type of public housing support or something like that. So they have a list of I think maybe 6 or 7 or 8 different things that you have to be qualified to receive that in order to also use the food pantry at the senior center. And when they do have customers in there, the outreach coordinator meets with them, makes sure that they're aware of all of the services that are available to them, in addition to knowing that there is another food pantry in town with St. Anne's. But the senior center, there's a lot of folks that come in and use it that, they're they're folks that they really do need it, and they're very grateful for it, and express that, just that's able to close that gap for them, with nutrition and hunger. And they offer nutrition classes and education and everything through the food pantry as well.
Okay. So, last question. Well, maybe one last one. Operationally, same kind of question on long-term, assuming this thing goes through. So let's say we get the money.
Yep.
Do we know what that looks like too? Because even where is the funding for even the food coming from?
It's
to
all
support
donation
that?
based.
All of it is?
Everything is donation based. The majority of it, the fresh food comes from partnerships with local grocery stores, and there is funding that's allocated from the town that provides like produce during the growing season with like Boston area gleaners or community harvest and things like that. But all of their dry goods, the vast majority of it is donation based. So people can either donate food, like actual like goods themselves, or they can donate to a fund that the staff over there purchase.
Excellent.
Well, if we get it, we'll have a lot to talk about. Any idea on the timing, Mr. Baldinger, when we might know?
So the deadline when the McGovern's office, I believe they go before it starts to get it implemented into the budget if if McGovern decides to move it forward in June or July, and then it goes through the process. And I think the earliest that we would see, we would know if he pulls it forward, but then if it actually gets funded, we wouldn't know that until late fall.
Yep, okay. If there's nothing else, okay to entertain a motion?
Yep, I move that we charge the chair with signing a letter of support for the federal congressional member-directed community project funding request.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes.
Thank you, Keith, for taking that initiative.
Sorry, yes, thank you, Keith. Appreciate it. Item number 14 is to review an act to set the fiscal 27 active employee health and life insurance rates. Appears that the increases range from 7.5% to 9.5%, depending on the plan and tier. Would you like to,
That is the summary, and, pretty favorable for us. We were able to reduce our initial budget estimate for this based on the work that we did through the West Suburban Health Group Board, and this has been ratified by the Insurance Advisory Committee already.
great. And just, maybe everyone's aware, through this collaborative, the West Suburban Health Group, the rates are set for all of the participating.
Yeah, 8 other communities.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
I move that we set the FY27 active employee health and life insurance rates.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you. I'm going to jump ahead to correspondence. Item number 15 is a letter dated March 3rd, 2026 from Wendy Quirian, 45 Maury Lane, regarding Parks and Recreation building renaming for Dawn Shannon. So Mrs. Shannon was a longtime employee of Shrewsbury in our Parks and Recreation Department, and she sadly passed away last month, and we of course extend our condolences to her family and loved ones. But Beth Cassavant has spoken with Mrs. Shannon's family regarding this specific request, so if you could bring us up to speed, that would be great.
Sure, so I reached out to Ms. Quirian, and then after speaking with her, I spoke with Rob Shannon, who is Dawn's son, and he will be the person that we communicate with going forward on this at his request. Grateful for Ms. Quirian and Mr. Shannon for bringing forth an idea to name the recreation center that we just opened, at the right next to Dean Park, as the Dawn Shannon Recreation Center at the Ray Stone Post. So recognizing that it is already named for someone, but wanting to also recognize and commemorate the contributions of Dawn Shannon. So several months ago, in anticipation of having to think of a name for the expansion of the cemetery, we had brought forth a potential naming policy, and that hasn't been completed yet. So I have spoken with the manager and the rest of the board each board member, just to bring them up to speed on this. And it seems that the path that we think would be most successful would be if we were able to finalize that naming policy and be able to go through that transparent public process, because it does include some public feedback as we move through this request to name the recreation center at the Raystone Post in honor of Dawn Shannon. And I did speak with Rob Shannon about the timing of all of this after speaking with the manager. So the building itself needs to be repainted. That funding is in the capital improvement plan, so it wouldn't even be approved until town meeting, and the funds for that isn't even available until July 1st. So the earliest we could ever even think about putting a sign on the building would be the fall. And so that does give us ample time to finalize the naming policy and then go through that public engagement process around whether or not this request will move forward, right? Because it's not just the 5 of us, but it's what the community would like. So if that's agreeable to everyone, that's the proposal.
I think that is a good plan. And I think it just, again, so the town not only is aware of the parameters, if you will, because inevitably we will get future requests, so we want to make sure that there is, consistency and fairness, but also the public engagement that you referenced. So I think that's a good plan. So I don't think we need to.
Madam Chair, I just, since it's on the agenda, I just wanted to also express my condolences to the Shannon family. I knew Dawn. She was a wonderful woman, full of life and light, and I appreciate her family and Ms. Quarian for bringing this forward to us. I know we still have to draft the policy, but just wanted to express that tonight.
Thank you. So I don't think we need an official vote. This is something that was already on
No,
the
I
roadmap.
mean,
and
the manager's
it's been
going
in
to
process.
get the policy back out to us so that we can review it and finalize it. And I know we just had a couple of things that we were trying to work through. Mr. Richards, I know you offered to sort of offer up some language around some of the points that you had provided when we originally spoke about this several months ago. And it's, I think, the impetus we need to get it done. Great.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Of course.
Okay, so as an official, we are going to go into executive session. So the motion is to enter into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, or lease of value of real property pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6. To discuss these matters in open session would compromise the position of the town, the chair so declares. I love the formal language. The board will not reconvene in open session this evening.
So moved.
Second.
This requires a roll call vote. Ms. Casamant?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Ms. Conlon?
Aye.
Mr. Richards?
Aye.
Ms. Flynn? Aye. The board will now enter executive session and will not reconvene in open session. Thank you and have a great evening.